We're all back. Eric, I want to come back to you on the reporting. The sort of body of reporting from the first term, and your now colleague David Fahrenthold did a lot of this on the emoluments clause and all the conflicts of foreign leaders staying at the hotel at the post office, was sort of a definitive body of reporting that gave a lot of people a lot of pause, and the Trump folks spent a lot of time spinning that away. This seems to be a whole new era. I mean, there doesn't seem to be any pushback from anyone in your story on the facts or the ethics. Just compare the approach to conflicts in the first term to what you covered in the story today.
Yeah, there just seems to be quite a fundamental difference from the Trump family, including the Trump sons, and particularly Eric Trump, who, during the first term, they took this position that they weren't going to do new international deals. And they were hesitating, and they didn't even want to create, an appearance of engaging in new transactions with foreigners. Now, I mean, they have like 4 different pending deals with the Saudi Arabia real estate company Dar Al Arkan, and they, in Saudi Arabia, in Dubai, in Oman, and they have deals that are pending in Vietnam. And there seems to be no kind of hesitation to continue to reach out and to do things that create appearances of conflict of interest. I mean, in Oman, they have a project that's being built on land owned by the government of Oman. And even Steve Witkoff, who is the special Mideast advisor, he has previous financial relationships with the Qatar Sovereign Wealth Fund that helped buy one of the hotels that he was an investor in. So there's very little dividing line between, particularly in the Middle East, their business transactions and their deals are blurring financially and foreign policy. It's hard to divide the two at the moment.
Katy, what could go wrong?
An enormous amount could go wrong, right? I mean, there is a reason that you don't want to think that your elected leaders, and it's why every other elected leader is in the position of having to declare their interests in this way, that you don't want to think that American foreign policy is being dictated to by the financial desires of the president or the president's family. I mean, the fact we began this, as we were saying, the fact that the head of the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund is also the head of the chair of the Live Tour, is also the person who was helping to bankroll Jared Kushner's own private equity fund. It's very enmeshed. And so at what point can the American voters think to themselves, right, I know that my vote is being cast and is being respected, and American foreign policy is being driven by my interests and my national security, as opposed to the interests of whoever is in the White House. And, this is not to say that previous presidents have been lily white. They haven't all been lily white, but there was a lot of attention was paid to Hunter Biden and to his why did he sit on the board of Burisma, and why was he calling up his father with his business associates. And the similar amount of scrutiny needs to be put on the Trump family, but because there are so many of these business interests, a lot of them thanks to the reporting we've just been talking about, that some of it's being exposed, but there is so much of this that is potentially happening.
I mean, there's no comparison, though, to Donald Trump in the Oval Office merging the PGA and Live Tours. There's none.
It's pretty on the nose in terms of, hey, you want to know what American sports dystopia looks like? It looks like that. And look, the golf thing, the cheating at golf thing, just to bring that back around.
Yeah, Rick Riley's reporting it.
Yeah, look, it reminds me of this whole thing about Elon Musk cheating at video games. Right? So
I didn't even know you could do that.
No, you can. And you can also eventually admit you were cheating at video games, but not be held accountable at all for doing so, despite it being deeply pathetic to brag about this thing. But the parallel to Elon cheating at video games and Trump cheating at golf is that their behavior on really low-stakes things is instructive when you consider what actually matters. Right? This is what they take pride in personally. So what happens when you're actually making a decision about how to behave or hide something or corrupt something when it comes to your bottom line? It's deeply troubling and symptomatic of a larger personality and a larger trend that you would cheat at something like golf. It's embarrassing.
What is the potential for any blowback at a consumer level? I mean, I feel like sports. People need sports right now, right? I mean, I'm counting the days till baseball starts. I mean, people need their sports, and I think they view them as a place where maybe we don't have the political fights with families or friends because we're just on the same side rooting for a team. But what is the potential for a fan base or a team base to say, I don't want to go to a sport or a game or be a fan if my money is going into the hands of the Trump Hotel in Oman?
Yeah, the biggest benefit that Trump has in navigating that particular stew of interests is that people do see it as an escape. And so their instinct is to say, to engage with this, to protest it, is to fuel something that I use to run away from. I use sports to run away from it. But we have seen protests in sports.
Well, the Major League Baseball moved the All-Star game out of Atlanta after they passed a voter suppression law. That seemed like an anomaly, maybe not a trend.
Well, also in Europe, when the Super League, the big... I mean, that's a separate episode of your show. But when there was this proposal to let's change the way soccer works in Europe. Let's make it so that the very rich people who run these teams don't have to worry about not being in the playoffs and so forth and so on. There were actually fans in England occupying stadiums. And the reason why, Nicole, was because they felt that it would ruin the product. It would ruin the thing they love. And so really what I'm saying is a warning to sports fans. Right now, we're seeing in golf the beginning of that. You've seen the fracturing of your sport. You've seen this new Saudi-backed live golf thing, which no one really likes. You're seeing a proposed merger at Donald Trump's knee. I don't think this ends well for sports fans. And I say that because typically when Donald Trump is acting in his own self-interest, it tends to be himself and his interests that profit, not the people who are paying money to go to this thing they grew up loving with their dad.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think, David Jolly, this comes back to what you said. I mean, sports are very lucrative and very expensive, right? It's a ticket that represents a treat, a birthday present, right? It's a memory. It's an investment in, your kid's childhood, taking them to an opening day, and to think that it's got all this stuff behind it now is a liability.
Yeah, look, sports fans will speak with their pocketbook, and we've seen dips in kind of the sports economy of different leagues depending on different eras. But voters, whether sports fans or not, speak with their ballots. And I think you get a twofer there to see how America responds to this second administration. What I'm looking for, Nicole, and I believe this will come to fruition, I think we're entering a midterm election where money in politics becomes a very real issue. We see it about once a decade, where money in politics all of a sudden becomes this very prescient issue on voters' minds. And I think what Trump and Elon Musk and others are teeing up here is the thread is from the corruption and the self-enrichment and the conflict of interest and conflict of decision-making on the world stage with our own national security. But it also speaks to the wealth gap at a time when people feel like they are being left behind, and the likes of Donald Trump and Elon Musk and half of Trump's cabinet are the billionaires getting more billions. Unless this economy becomes white hot for all different groups of American people, that is the only thing that might save Donald Trump from this theme developing going into the midterms. I think this could be a midterm where money in politics speaks to the corruption, to the wealth gap, to the conflicts of interest of the administration. And you are already feeling kind of this compelling movement among voters that are saying, wait, I feel like I'm being left behind. And in the first 30 days of the Donald Trump administration, the richer are getting richer. Nobody's checking or holding them account for their grift and their graft. And I think those voters are going to show up next November if this economy doesn't get white hot for them as well.